Have you ever met someone and felt like you've known them forever? Not because you've met in this life, but because you once made a vow. This is the story of such a promise. One that returned not too early, not too late, but at just the right time. Chapter 1: The Quiet Rejection. Liana didn't hate men, nor did she carry a deep emotional wound that caused her heart to shut down. No, not at all. She still talked, still smiled, still held just enough grace to make people around her feel drawn to her. Yet, she always declined, gently, naturally, without a hint of malice. As if all the invitations, the glances, the candlelit dinners always arrived at the wrong time. She was 28, living in Melbourne, working in communications for an educational media company. A stable job, good income, a loving family, kind friends. People often described her appearance as mysteriously captivating. Still, there was always a void, not because someone was missing beside her, but because there was something she had never touched. Liana came to Palmer's Healing Center not because she was sick, nor was she chasing a third eye awakening like some of her friends joked. She simply wanted to understand, why did love not excite her? Why did everything in life seem fine, yet something still felt missing? Palmer greeted her with gentle eyes, hands lightly clasped as if holding something sacred. He didn't ask much. He invited her to sit, poured tea, then quietly waited. Liana began to speak, without prompting, as if the questions had long been waiting inside. Palmer listened, jotted down a few notes. Finally, he said, "There are things we don't understand, because they didn't begin with us." Around the same time, a man stepped into Melbourne on a 14-hour flight from San Francisco. Daniel, 32, a product strategy specialist for a major tech firm. He came to Australia for a 1-month project. He didn't believe in spirituality, didn't read self-help, had no interest in chakras, frequencies, or healing. But just a few days after his arrival, he began to dream. Strange dreams, full of light and nostalgia. A silhouette of a young woman, the scent of damp earth, of wind, and a feeling as if something was calling him back. One afternoon, while strolling through Fitzroy, he passed a small sign, Palmer Healing, Past Life Regression and Reiki Healing. Without knowing why, he stepped inside. In the corner of the quiet waiting room, Palmer saw Daniel for the first time. He greeted him like any other client. No special intuition, no odd sensations, just like he had once greeted Liana. In her first week, Liana felt nothing extraordinary, but for the first time in years, she felt like she was sitting with herself. Her first regression session didn't take her anywhere specific, just layers of slowly moving light. Once, she saw a dark stone wall, a small hand drawing circles on it with wet sand. Palmer just nodded and took notes. "We haven't gone back yet, but the body has granted permission." In the second week, a restlessness began to rise in her, as if something was emerging from beneath a still lake. But the surface hadn't broken yet. She couldn't name it. At the same time, Daniel returned to the center for his first session. Not because of the recurring dream, but because he felt uneasy. Nothing was wrong. Work was fine. The project was progressing. But every morning, he woke up with a sense. He was missing something important. In the dimly lit therapy room, Palmer asked Daniel to lie back, close his eyes, and simply breathe. "Don't try to remember," he said. "Just let the memories come like a breeze." Daniel quickly slipped into a half-dream state. But what he saw wasn't images. It was a sound, a startled cry, a pair of eyes. He didn't know whose. He just felt his own eyes sting, his hands clenching air. After the session, Daniel didn't say much. Just, "Something's missing, something important, and it's not from this life." Palmer didn't ask further. He nodded, as he often did when someone touched the first layer of memory. Liana and Daniel never met. They came on different days, at different times. They shared the same space, separated by days of the week and a thin wall called not yet time. Until one quiet evening, as Palmer sorted through his client logbook, his eyes paused between two adjacent pages. A short note from Liana's session, a symbol he used to mark a deep familial bond. On the next page, Daniel's, the same symbol, the same imagery, the same pain. Palmer stopped writing, lowered his glasses, leant back in his chair, and let out a quiet breath. Chapter 2: Invisible Threads. It was a calm evening. Palmer stayed at the center later than usual. The room was tidy. The dim yellow light illuminated handwritten notes in his thick logbook. Not for diagnoses, but to record what couldn't yet be named. Page 247 held Liana's third session. In the top left corner, he underlined softly, "Soul connection, father figure. Heavy emotions. No tears, but choked up." Page 248. Daniel's second session, just 2 days later. "Major loss. Saw father in pain. Child's eyes, but embodied as father. An embrace." Palmer sat upright. He traced each line with his finger, then closed the book. Reopened. Reread every detail. Silently. Some descriptions were eerily similar. Not in the words, but in the emotional undercurrent beneath them. The next day, he saw Liana. She sat across from him, hands loosely wrapped around a hot cup of tea. "Last time, when you mentioned the image of your father being tortured," Palmer asked gently, "do you remember how you felt?" Liana frowned slightly, then nodded. "I do. But what's strange is, I didn't feel his pain. I felt pain for not being able to protect him. I remember the embrace, though I didn't see his face clearly. But I knew I loved him." Palmer wrote it down. Underlined 3 words. "Loved like a child." 2 days later, it was Daniel's turn. This regression brought him back to that same image, but from a different angle. He saw himself lying on dusty ground. Crushed chest, dried blood, eyes half open, spotting a figure rushing toward him. A small hand cradled his head, a tearful gaze, a sentence, unclear in words, but warm like a river flowing through his heart. Daniel opened his eyes, silent for a moment, then said, "I don't know why, but I'm certain she's the one I promised I would come back to find." Palmer didn't respond. just smiled faintly. That night, Palmer sat with Olive on the back porch. The tea had gone cold. A breeze brushed the roof. "There are two people," he said, voice low and distant. "I think they once had each other, deeply, but they haven't met, and I can't tell them." Olive was silent, then softly replied, "Then let time speak. But if you can't tell them, maybe you can still place light on the path they'll walk." Palmer looked at her. A glint flickered in his eyes. "You mean a gentle setup?" Olive smiled. "Not a setup, just a suggestion to the universe that it's time. And then let them choose each other." And from that moment, Palmer began a quiet plan of his own. No interference, no directing, just creating a window for the wind to pass through. Chapter 3: The Unseen Current. Liana left the healing center with a lighter step than the day before. In her hands, a still warm cup of herbal tea. In her heart, the echo of an image she couldn't name. Daniel arrived on time, 15 minutes early, as usual. He sat quietly in the waiting area, eyes glancing at the treatment brochure, though his mind was elsewhere, caught in something unspoken. As Liana stepped out of the therapy room, their eyes met by chance. No words, no greeting, just a look of very soft. But in that gaze, something stilled in both their hearts. Daniel entered the therapy room a few minutes later. Palmer sat beside him, gently guiding him through a few deep breaths, then led Daniel into trance. The first image to arise: red, dusty earth. Daniel saw a man lying motionless, blood pooling around his chest, eyes barely open. Then a figure approached, kneeling. He couldn't see the face, but he felt the embrace, so tender, so still. In that moment, Daniel couldn't speak aloud, but he knew she loved me. Not because I lived, but because I was about to leave. I couldn't feel my body, but I heard her crying. And right then, I wanted to live again, just to say something to her. Daniel opened his eyes. The room bathed in soft light. He sat in silence, then finally spoke, voice deep and slow. "I don't know who I was in that memory, but she, that girl, made me feel I had once been loved in a very different way." He paused, took a breath. Not the love between young people, but a kind of bond, like I was someone she couldn't save. Palmer looked up. He said nothing, only recorded one short line in the logbook. A moment where they couldn't save each other, but still chose to be there. No pain in remembering, only stillness. Outside, the breeze swept through the lavender bushes. Palmer stepped out to the porch. Olive was already there, placing a pot of tea on the small wooden table. He sat beside her, silent. Olive smiled gently, pouring him a cup, then asked softly, "What did you see this time?" Palmer closed his eyes for a moment, then replied, "Not clear yet, but I think someone once held a final embrace and carried it across many lifetimes, never forgetting." Chapter 4, Between Two Final Breaths. The healing center was quiet as always, but Palmer was not. Something made his breath slower than usual. Today was scheduled to be the final session for both Daniel and Liana. He had known this when setting the appointments and had deliberately left a time gap between the two names. Daniel and Liana. Daniel finished first. The session ended, but his mind was still adrift, as if it hadn't yet left the place he had just visited. When he opened the door into the hallway, he froze. Right in front of him, Liana was entering. Her hair was tied loosely, a soft brown dress, a delicate face with distant eyes. They looked at each other for the second time, but this time the gaze lingered. Daniel opened his mouth as if to speak, but only bowed slightly. Liana nodded in return, barely. No words, but something subtle had truly passed between them. Daniel left. Liana entered. The door closed, but Palmer stood behind the frosted glass for a long while, eyes unmoving. Inside the therapy room, Palmer looked at Liana for a long time. "This time I won't guide anything," he said softly. "Just breathe. And if anything comes, let it come." Liana nodded, lips gently pressed. She closed her eyes. The light dimmed. A rain of memory began to fall. She saw herself in another body, an 18-year-old girl. Thick hair tangled by the wind, eyes wide open, face dusty. Her father was being executed, right before her eyes, in a square, full of blood and retreating footsteps. After the soldiers left, she stepped out. No one stopped her. No one dared touch her grief. She knelt down, lifted his body. He was heavy, limp, blood soaked her sleeves. She couldn't cry out loud, only whispered, "Father, I love you deeply. I miss you so much. You suffered this fate for the people, for our village. I admire you and am proud that you are my father. If there is another life, I vow to walk beside you again. This life, we didn't have enough time together, but farewell, Father, farewell." She brushed her fingers over his half-closed eyes. At that moment, his hand moved slightly, as if trying to hold something sacred, and then he gently exhaled his final breath. No pain, no struggle, just a face that softened, peaceful, as if he had waited for those words to let go. Palmer sat nearby. His hand tightened into a fist. Liana cried. No sobs, no awakening. Only a clear stream of tears slid down her cheek. When the session ended, she lay still for a long time. Palmer didn't speak. He let her rest, as if letting soul threads recover from a deep dive. An hour later, Liana left the center, her face serene like a quiet lake. Holding a dry tissue, her gaze was set on a place that didn't belong to this world. She knew this was the final session, for it had brought her to a place of experience. No announcements, no appointments, just everything was enough, deep enough, far enough, still enough. That evening, Palmer sat on the porch. No tea, no lights, only Olive beside him in silence. "I tried," Palmer said after a while. Olive didn't look at him. She simply said, I know, and the universe tried too. But sometimes, even souls that are meant to meet may pass each other by. Palmer lowered his head. A leaf fell into his palm. Maybe so. Maybe. This time we arrived half a breath too late. Chapter 5. The Right Moment to Meet. Liana was sent on a business trip to the U.S. One quiet weekend afternoon, rain fell slowly, like background music for an empty mood. Liana sat alone in a small cafe near her residence. A day off, no meetings, no schedule, but inside her, there remained a void that nothing could fill. She ordered a latte, chose a corner seat. Rain slid down the glass. Soft piano music played. She rested her chin in her palm, eyes gazing far. Not sad, not happy, just a very wistful. The cafe door opened. A man entered, brushed the rain from his coat. He walked past her. She didn't look up. As usual, she didn't notice, but something paused in him. Daniel chose a table not far from hers, looked around. Then his eyes landed on her, that face, that posture, as if he'd seen it somewhere in an old dream. His heart beat faster. He didn't know why, only knew if he didn't say something, he would regret it. He stood up, approached. Excuse me, I know this is sudden, but I feel like I've seen you somewhere before. Liana looked up. Their eyes met. A brief stillness. No chimes. No dramatic music. Just a look that reached very deep. She, against her usual nature, smiled softly. Maybe. Perhaps. We passed each other once and didn't know. They sat down, ordered more coffee. The conversation began with small talk. But the more they spoke, the more oddly familiar it felt. Daniel asked for her number. Liana didn't decline. They met again. Once, twice, then 3 times. Each time, another layer of memory stirred like a melody already known. Both had once gone through healing sessions at a place called the Healing Centre in Australia, and they shared their experiences with each other. They hugged for a long time and cried. They had passed each other, but never realized it was each other. And they fell in love, not rushed, not desperate, just no longer any reason for the heart to delay. They decided to marry. And out of great respect for something that once guided them, they invited Palmer and Olive to the wedding. The invitation didn't name the groom. It simply read, Liana and the one she found in time. Palmer and Olive arrived. The ceremony was held in a windy late autumn garden. White petals drifted down. The air was like a fairy tale. As Palmer walked past the rows of seats, his eyes froze. The groom was Daniel. Daniel approached, grasping Palmer's hand, like family reuniting. "Isn't it amazing, Palmer?" He smiled, eyes misty. "We meet again, but this time, not at the healing center. We had a chance to come together before, but didn't realize it." Palmer squeezed his hand gently. Across the aisle, Olive held Liana's hand. Her gaze filled with emotion, as if seeing a spiritual child grown and returning to the light. Palmer spoke, voice deep and sincere. "We knew your story, through the sessions, through fragmented dreams. We once tied that thread in silence." He paused, as if to feel the moment was real. Meanwhile, the newlyweds looked wide-eyed in surprise. "You once tied our connection?" Palmer nodded gently. He didn't mention the karmic misstep he once worried about, but he confirmed it for them. Olive stepped closer, hand still on her husband's shoulder, smiled sweetly and whispered into Palmer's ear. This time, they arrived in sync. That night, Palmer sat alone at the living room window. The logbook lay open on his lap. The breeze whispered like the voice of a reunited soul. He wrote one final line: "Destiny doesn't come early, nor late. It arrives at the perfect time, when two hearts beat as one and are ready." Then he closed the book, exhaled softly, and smiled, like someone who had just witnessed a miracle without needing one. Even when the mind forgets, the soul remembers, and love always finds its way back when both hearts are ready.
If this story touched something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone you care about, leave a like if it resonated, and subscribe to join us for more journeys of healing and remembrance. Thank you for being here, and until next time, may the light find you wherever you are.